Welcome to our overview on congressional leadership. The House and the Senate alike choose the majority and minority leaders for their adept negotiating skills, their finely honed ability to guide compromise, and their skills of persuasion. A majority leader nurtures compromise in the legislative process by knowing the members' positions on legislation well enough to recognize which issues are negotiable and which are deal breakers. By engineering trade-offs between players and by convincing committee chairs that a negotiated compromise is the best outcome they can expect. In earlier eras, forceful leaders rose to the position of majority leader in both houses and strongly influenced congressional priorities and legislation. But as political parties have come to play a less important role in the election of members of the House and the Senate, allegiance to party leaders in these institutions has dwindled. The era has long passed in which individuals could essentially control what Congress did through their assertive personalities. Today's congressional power brokers face members whose loyalty to the party and the leadership is tempered by the need to please constituencies that themselves are less loyal to the parties than in bygone times. Nonetheless, despite the evolution in the role of congressional leaders, partisanship remains a strong aspect of congressional politics, particularly since 1994. Although Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution states, "The House of Representatives shall choose their Speaker and other officers, and all members of the House vote for the Speaker," it is really the members of the majority party who select their Speaker of the House. Second in line of presidential succession after the Vice President, the Speaker serves as the presiding officer and manager of the House. This succession is set up in the Presidential Succession Act of 1947. In this capacity, the Speaker chairs floor debates, makes major party committee assignments, assigns members to the powerful Rules Committee, negotiates with members of the minority party and the White House, and guides legislation through the House. But the Speaker is also the leader of his or her party in the House, and a key duty associated with this role is helping party members get reelected. Finally, the Speaker is himself or herself an elected member of the House. The House leadership, which in addition to the Speaker includes the majority leader, the minority leader, and the party whips, is chosen at the beginning of each session of Congress through a conference, also known as a caucus. During a caucus, all the members of the political party meet and elect their chamber leaders, approve committee assignments, and elect committee chairpersons. Party leaders also may call a party caucus during a legislative session to shore up support for an issue being voted upon or to formulate the party's position on an issue on the agenda. This use of caucus is different than what we showed in class. One issue before Congress is the problem of controlling greenhouse gas emissions. In 2010, Republicans won a majority in the House of Representatives, ousting Representative Nancy Pelosi, a Democrat from California, who had served as Speaker since 2006. Pelosi proved to be a lightning rod for critics in the 2010 midterm elections, with Republican candidates urging voters to fire Pelosi by electing a Republican majority. Voters, many of whom objected to President Obama and the Democratic Congress's handling of the economy and health care reform, listened, and the Republican majority swept into office. Pelosi, the first woman to serve as Speaker, was an unabashed liberal who had railed against many of George W. Bush administration's policies during her first 2 years as Speaker. Her posturing resulted in a lack of cooperation by many Republicans in her chamber, and then the loss of the Democratic majority in the 2010 elections paved the way for the current Speaker of the House, John Boehner, who is a Republican from Ohio. As Speaker, Boehner's priority is repealing the Affordable Health Care Act, President Obama's health care reform package that had been passed during Pelosi's tenure. Boehner, who enjoys respect and loyalty among his colleagues, is also a vocal critic of the Obama administration, much in the way that Pelosi opposed the Bush administration during her tenure. As Speaker, Boehner will be forced to herd the various elements of the Republican Party in the House of Representatives, including those members ascribing the Tea Party positions, to a cohesive position. He will need to unify liberal, moderate, and conservative Republicans, build coalitions composed of representatives from different districts, generations, ethnicities, and sexes. These skills are essential attributes for the Speaker of the House. The Speaker relies on the House Majority Leader to help develop and implement the majority party's legislative strategy, work with minority party leadership, and encourage unity among majority party legislatures. The current Majority Leader is Eric Cantor, Republican from Virginia. In this last task, the Speaker and the House Majority Leader are assisted by the Majority Whip, who acts as a go-between with the leadership and the party members in the House. The term whip comes from the English hunting term whipper-in, a hunter whose job is to keep the foxhounds in the pack and to prevent them from straying during a fox hunt. The current Majority Whip is Kevin McCarthy, a Republican from California. Similarly, the job of the Party Whip is to keep party members together, encouraging them to vote with the party on issues and preventing them from straying off on their own positions. The minority party in the House also elects leaders. The House Minority Leader, who currently is Nancy Pelosi, Democrat from California, and the Minority Whip, whose job mirrors those of their majority party colleagues, but without the power that comes from holding a majority in the House. And the current Minority Whip is Steny Hoyer, Democrat from Maryland. Now let's switch to the Senate. In the Senate, the Vice President of the United States serves as the president of that body, according to the Constitution. But in actual practice, Vice Presidents preside over the Senate only rarely, oftentimes to break a vote. Vice Presidents, however, have one power in the Senate that, although rarely exercised, is enormously important. If a vote in the upper house of Congress is tied, the Vice President breaks the tie. Such a situation occurred in 2005 when Vice President Dick Cheney cast the tie-breaking vote on a major budget bill that slashed federal spending by nearly $40 billion by allowing states to impose new fees on Medicaid recipients, cutting federal funds that enforce child support regulations, and imposing new federal work requirements on state welfare recipients. The majority party in the Senate elects a Senate leader called the President pro tempore, meaning president for the time. This position is often referred to as the President pro temp. The job of the President pro temp is to chair the Senate in the Vice President's absence. Historically, this position has been honorary, with the majority party senator who has the longest record of continuous Senate service being elected to the office. Although the position is honorary, the Senate's President pro temp is third in line of presidential succession, following the Vice President and the Speaker of the House. Following the death of Senator Robert Byrd, Democrat from West Virginia, on June 28, 2010, Senator Daniel Inouye, Democrat from Hawaii, was sworn in as the President pro temp, and upon his death, Patrick Leahy, the Democrat from Vermont, who is the current President pro temp, was sworn in. The real power in the U.S. Senate is held and wielded by the Senate Majority Leader, whose job is to manage the legislative process so that favored bills are passed, to schedule debate on legislation in consultation with his or her counterpart in the minority party, the Senate Minority Leader. The current Senate Majority Leader is Harry Reid, Democrat from Nevada. The current Senate Minority Leader is Mitch McConnell, Republican from Kentucky. Also, to act as the spokesperson for the majority party in the Senate. The majority and the minority leaders both play crucial roles in ushering bills through the Senate, and the majority leader facilitates the numerous negotiations that arise when senators bargain over the content of a given piece of proposed legislation. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, Democrat from Nevada, was elected after the Democrats won a majority of seats in the 2006 Senate elections. Reid is a soft-spoken politician who was elected partly because of his talent as building consensus, although not lately, a necessary skill given his desire to tackle some highly partisan and controversial issues when he assumed his leadership role, including ethics reform, funding for stem cell research, and an increase in the federal minimum wage.